we even start to begin thinking about forgiveness, we need a couple of necessary steps before that, and those are true repentance and accountability. And I'm seeing neither of.
So that she sounds like Jimmy Dore.
Yeah,
that's what Jimmy Dore's been saying, that and before we give forgiveness for the people who were Nazis around COVID policy, who were pro-lockdown, pro-mandates, and they were 100% wrong on all that stuff. It's okay to be wrong about that stuff. What's not okay is then demonize people who disagree with you on facts.
Yeah.
That's not okay. And what Chomsky did is not okay by equating people who didn't want to go along with the government and big pharma's COVID narrative that they should be starved to death, basically, and that they're equivalent of people who want to murder you with their car. That's what Chomsky said, and he still hasn't apologized. I have a feeling he never will. I have a feeling we get big reveal on Chomsky's character. Turns out you can be super smart and still lack character.
Noam Chomsky, the Pol Pot of the flu.
So now this guy tweets this out. There's a new study. So you see this study? It says the incidence of myocarditis and pericarditis in post-COVID-19 unvaccinated patients. A large population-based study. So they wanted to see if you get myocarditis after you've had COVID. Because we know that you get myocarditis, there is some myocarditis from the vax, especially for males 40 and under.
And YouTube also tells us that you have a huge chance of getting it if you don't get the vax. So are you telling me that NIH has different information?
I'm telling you.
Than YouTube scientists, who I respect and I believe are right ahead of time before you say this.
So from this study, the incidence of myocarditis and pericarditis in post-COVID-19 unvaccinated patients. So this is a good study. What did they find? Post-COVID-19 infection was not associated with either myocarditis or pericarditis. We did not observe an increased incidence of neither pericarditis nor myocarditis in adult patients recovering from COVID-19. Their conclusion, this is from their study, our data suggests that there is no increase in the incidence of myocarditis or pericarditis in COVID-19 recovered patients compared to uninfected matched controls. Further long-term studies will be needed to estimate the incidence of pericarditis and myocarditis in patients diagnosed with COVID-19. So what they're saying, because what we've been told over and over is that there's a greater incidence of myocarditis and pericarditis from getting COVID than there is from the COVID vaccine. So that's what they've said.
Is myocarditis an enlarged heart? Is that what that means?
It's just inflammation. So one is in the interior of the heart and one is the external. So myocarditis and pericarditis, one is the thing around the heart and one is, and I'm not sure which is with.
Well, is there any information about Chelsea Handler's myovagitis after her shots? I believe she's in the hospital with it. I don't remember any word coming back about the...
That is not funny.
No, well, because it works. The vaccine works.
So I have to state again, as I do anytime I talk about the COVID or vaccines, that the COVID vaccines are safe and effective. They will keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or death. And they slow the transmission and contraction. So they are fantastic. And that's the YouTube science, which is the right science.
And not only that, I trust the
government.
And especially the veterinarian in charge of Pfizer. Because who better to protect me from horse drugs than a veterinarian?
So we know that it's now undeniable that the vaccine can cause more myocarditis in men under 40 than the COVID-19 virus itself. So, and we've covered this already. So he's showing you that they did a study and it showed that if you're a male 40 or under, that you have a higher incidence of myocarditis than the people who got COVID, right? So now we know this. So COVID vaccines may cause myocarditis, but COVID itself causes myocarditis too, right? Well, according to this large Israeli study, of 196,992 unvaccinated adults after COVID infection showed that COVID infection was not associated with either myocarditis or pericarditis. So that is great news. A, it's great news. And B, it kind of puts a dent in their narrative about myocarditis and the COVID virus and the vax. So it just puts a big, huge MFing dent in it. And again, I'm going to tell you the vaccine is safe and effective, and it keeps you from being seriously ill or dying or going hospital, and it also will slow the transmission and contraction. But there's all this other stuff.
You know what it is? YouTube does move at the speed of science,
Yes.
but not this science.
But now we know that COVID, we know that there is no increase in myocarditis or pericarditis in people who get COVID, and they recover. Isn't that great news? That's great news.
Podcaster Joe Rogan, who is a frequent spreader of COVID misinformation, was fact-checked on his show in real time. Here it is.
For young boys in particular, there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
So the latest in the fight against COVID-19 and a new recommendation from the Florida Surgeon General. He's now recommending against the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine for men of certain ages. The department says the analysis found an 84% increase in cardiac-related death amongst males 18 to 39 within 28 days following the vaccination.
You know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well.
We're going to be looking at a study. And what it did, it looked at a large cohort of people who'd had COVID, diagnosed by PCR, a large group of people as a control that had not had COVID, who never had symptoms and tested negative on PCR, and they compared the incidence of myocarditis and pericarditis between the two groups. What they found is there was no difference between the groups. So the COVID group did not have more myocarditis and pericarditis than the group who'd never had the COVID infections.
Which exceeds the risk.
Turns out Joe Rogan was right.
Yeah.
Turns out Joe Rogan was right. That's Josh Zepps. Now, Josh Zepps, fine individual, nice guy.
Defended me on Young Turks when that prick Cenk was going in on me back in the day.
Did he?
Yep.
Josh Zepps he's a good egg. And he just he was wrong about that at the time. But at the time, that was the information that was being circulated in the mainstream press, what he's going to say here.
Myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's
is.
true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. Yeah, so you're about 8 times.
So again, not dunking on Josh Zepps at all. They looked it up and they found science to back up Josh Zepps, because that's what the big pharma funded media was saying back then. But now we have actual studies, and we've done, and they debunked all that stuff. And it turns out Joe Rogan was right. But let's just remember that the vaccine is safe and effective. It will keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or death, and that it does slow the transmission and contraction of the virus, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And
unless it breaks through, but everything gets breakthrough.
Some things break through. So, and I'm not giving medical advice. We're just covering the thing. We'll see you November 19th and 20th in Austin, Texas. November 26th, that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, in Burbank. And then all December, we're going to be in Los Angeles doing Friday night shows. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all the tickets and become a premium member. While you're there, you get all of our videos unedited. jimmydore.com, not Jimmy Dore Comedy.